In this video I will explain a drama film based on a true story that was released in 2008 with the title Woman in Berlin. The story will focus on a woman who is the main character in this film, but the woman's name is kept secret and never mentioned, so we'll call her Greta. Greta is a journalist who has traveled to 12 countries and mastered several foreign languages. Her husband is one of the German soldiers, and on that day he says goodbye to go to the battlefield. Her life is so normal like most people in Germany, where she always parties with her friends and believes that her country will win the war. But they don't realize that on that day the Soviet army has entered Berlin, and suddenly an explosion disrupts their party. The Soviet soldiers have completely surrounded Berlin, so the women and civilians are trying to save themselves by hiding underground. In the underground shelter, there are children, the elderly, and many women including Greta. The Soviet army orders the remaining German soldiers to come out and surrender. However, the Germans refuse to surrender and choose to put up a final fight, although in the end they are unable to stop the Soviet troops who have entered the city. After the battle ends, a major named Andrei who led the battalion suddenly receives a new order to stay at that point for a while and not move towards the Reichstag or government buildings. Major Andrei and his soldiers objected to the order, but it is an order they have to obey. Meanwhile, one of the Soviet soldiers manages to find the civilians who are hiding underground. Fortunately, Greta, who can speak Russian, tries to distract him. The soldier thinks that Greta is of Russian descent, so he invites her to join him and offers some food. Greta and two of her friends are finally forced to come out of hiding just to get food. However, upon returning to the underground, one of the Soviet soldiers begins to look for German women to satisfy his lust. Greta feels sorry for her, so she tries to help one of the women. But when she tries to trick the soldiers, the old woman instead runs away and leaves Greta alone, and she even locks the door of the shelter so that Greta is trapped in the room. Greta tries to stay calm even though she is terrified. With her ingenuity, she tricks the soldier by saying she knows a good place to do it. The soldier keeps following her from behind, and when he is caught off guard, Greta takes advantage of the situation to run away and trap the soldier in the room. Afterwards, she rushes to meet the Soviet officers for their help and protection, but no one cares about her complaints, including Major Andrei, who says that his people are in good condition. Greta is disappointed and finally goes back to the underground shelter, but suddenly, the Soviet soldiers who tried to rape her find her again. Although she keeps trying to fight, in the end she has to give up her body to be enjoyed by the lecherous soldiers. In the following scene, Greta and the women finally find a better place after an old woman allows them to live in her apartment even though the apartment is slightly damaged by an explosion. However, they don't know that there is a young German soldier hiding on the top floor of the apartment with a young woman. All the women are frightened when the Soviet soldiers begin to enter the apartment. They all run away to save themselves, but not with Greta. She prefers to stay there because she thinks running away is futile. Greta and the German women can't do anything and are forced to do whatever the Soviet soldiers want. At that point, Greta is completely desperate and can only surrender when the Russian soldiers take turns enjoying her body. After all the abuse she has received, Greta decides to seek out high-ranking officers to get protection from them, and at least her body would not be enjoyed by the lowly soldiers. Then she goes to the Supreme Commander, Major Andrei. Greta recounts all the abuse experienced by German women, but Andrei twists the facts by saying that German soldiers also did much worse things to Russian women when they invaded, so that this incident is a fitting revenge for what they did. Greta doesn't give up and tries to meet with another officer. She finally meets a lieutenant named Anatol to ask for help, but Anatol simply says that she has to serve him this afternoon. Greta is forced to accept his offer even though she has to sell her pride, but at least she can get protection instead of having to experience brutal rape from lowly soldiers. Anatol invites Greta to party with his friends in an abandoned apartment, and afterwards, Greta eventually has to fulfill Anatol's desire. On the following day, Major Andrei visits the apartment to meet Greta, but Greta ignores him because before he didn't care at all about the complaints she conveyed. When Andrei opens the door to her room, Greta immediately takes off her clothes because she thinks Andrei just wants to enjoy her body, but it turns out that Andrei chooses to leave without a word. Although it is a war, Andrei feels guilty for what his soldiers have done to innocent women, and he realizes that women are the real victims of war. Greta cannot get the protection she's looking for because Anatol only comes and goes to enjoy her body. Meanwhile, the young German soldier hiding upstairs is getting fed up with the situation as he can only eat dry bread every day, so he decides to go out and steal food from the Soviet soldiers even though it is a suicide mission. The following day, Major Andrei and the other officers throw a small party and invite Greta to join because she can speak Russian. At that moment, Major Andrei begins to be fascinated by Greta after learning that she is an intelligent woman. Suddenly, a commotion outside disrupts their party. One of the Soviet soldiers confesses that he sees young German soldiers stealing their food, and he is also armed. He is very sure that the German soldier must be hiding on the top floor of the apartment. Greta denies that there is only one woman and they have never seen a German soldier. The soldier is convinced that Greta is lying, so he tries to find the German soldier and beats up one of the innocent old men. Major Andrei is angry at what the soldier is doing, so he beats the soldier brutally. Major Andrei warns the German women that anyone who is armed or conceals a German soldier will be executed immediately. But after the incident, Andrei goes to meet Greta at her apartment, and Andrei can't hide his feelings that he really likes her. Afterward, Greta goes to meet the young woman who lived on the top floor and tells her to leave the apartment immediately, but Greta is surprised to see that the German soldier is actually there. The young soldier turns out to be a deserter who refused to go to Siberia with his comrades. Greta decides to keep silent about that, and she always writes down everything she experiences in her diary. All the German women have given up and don't care about what the Soviet soldiers did to them, and now each of them has a protector. Although it is something taboo, at least they can get some good food or protection from them. They even confess how often they did it with the Soviet soldiers, but they promise to keep quiet because otherwise their husbands or the Germans would not want to touch them after the war is over. On the other hand, the relationship between Greta and Major Andrei is getting closer because Andrei values an educated woman like her. Anatol and Andrei take turns coming to Greta just to vent their lust, even though she is actually worried that one day they will both come together and kill her because of it. One of Andrei's subordinates, who is aware of the relationship, asks Greta to stay away from her commander and informs her that the Germans had hanged his wife, but Greta says that Major Andrei himself came to her. A few days later, all Germans receive the news that Hitler has killed himself, which means Germany has lost the war. One of the German officers who announces the news orders all the remaining soldiers to surrender because any resistance will be in vain. Under the pressure of the Soviet Union, Berlin is finally forced to surrender in April 1945, and this ends the war that has been going on for the last few years in Europe. All the Soviet soldiers are overjoyed by the news and start celebrating the victory by singing their national anthem. They party until late at night, and in the middle of the party one of the Russian soldiers goes to the apartment to find a German woman he can sleep with. Unfortunately, the soldiers find the woman who is on the top floor where the German soldier is hiding. When he is about to take off the woman's clothes, the German soldier who knows of his arrival fires his gun and shocks the Soviet soldiers who are partying outside. Unfortunately, the shot misses, and the Russian soldier kills him immediately by throwing him from the top floor. The Russian soldier also found a grenade upstairs. As a result of the incident, Major Andrei orders his soldiers to execute the young woman who has been hiding the German soldiers. Andrei believes this is a resistance against the Soviet army, so he asks all the women to admit that they know everything. However, Greta says that they know nothing about it. Andrei believes her words and tells them to return to their apartment, even though his decision is opposed by all the other officers because they want all the women to be executed. One of his subordinates even threatens to report the incident, but Andrei doesn't care and is ready to bear all the consequences. The Soviet soldiers finally continue their celebrations. In the middle of the party, Andrei goes to the apartment to meet Greta with a bicycle for her. What Greta fears before really happens, because Andrei comes while she is serving Anatol, but luckily Andrei just tells Anatol to leave immediately. Then, Andrei expresses his feelings to Greta that he really loves her and wants her to be his wife. Greta is forced to refuse by saying that she still has a husband who is coming home soon. Hearing her refusal, Andrei decides to leave her, but suddenly Greta forbids him to go. She can't lie to herself that she actually has feelings for Andrei because she thinks Andrei is a different man. A few days later, Greta looks for Andrei for his help, but she can't find him. When Greta returns to the apartment, she is surprised by the return of her husband who has been waiting for her. A lieutenant has also been waiting for her to deliver a farewell letter from Major Andrei, who was about to be transferred due to the incident a few days ago. Greta's feelings are mixed, and she read Andrei's letter first. Greta tries to explain to Gerd that she doesn't live alone in the apartment. She also gives him all her diaries and tells him to read all the suffering she has endured since the Soviets invaded. She hopes that Gerd will understand the situation she was in at that time, but Gerd is very disappointed and calls her a disgusting woman. Afterward, Greta rushes to meet Andrei and says goodbye. She manages to meet him just moments before he is about to leave.
Achte auf sich. Als ich sie kennenlernen durfte.
Greta thanks Andre for protecting her and treating her well. Upon returning home, Greta and her husband try to clean their apartment and get on with their lives. But a few days later, Gerd decides to leave her without telling her where he is going. The story of the woman in Berlin was a big scandal and many people said it was an insult to German women. The author was shocked by the rejection and humiliation of her book, so that it was strictly forbidden to be published while she was alive. Her real name was never revealed even after her death.